Hey YouTube, in this video I'm talking about how to effectively sprint the 200 meters. So for anyone that knows anything about sprinting, then you're aware that it's based off the anaerobic system. And the anaerobic system is incapable of acting optimally for no more than about 80 meters. So even 100 meters you can't sprint all out. So it's even more so for 200. So the race plan for 200 meters is slightly different to what you would have for 100 meters. So first of all, the start's about the same though. You have a dry phase, you can hold it for about 60 meters. If you can hold it for longer, that's even better. And then from there, whatever speed you have, you float with. You just hold that speed and you just continue around the bend. As you're coming around the bend, it's essential that when you get to around like you'll be just like the sharpest curve, that you move left. You start moving left until you're basically next to the line. What will end up happening is you'll kind of slingshot off of the curve. If you're behind, you'll catch up, and if you're right next to everyone, you should shoot forwards if they're not using the curve optimally, because it's kind of impossible to sprint optimally along the curve. And whilst you're doing that, you want to make sure that your arms aren't straight like this. You want your left arm, that's over this side, or is it your right? No, it's your right arm. You want your right arm to go across your body and then your left arm to go behind you, so that you're turning as you go around the curve as well. And then from there, around 110 meters, you want to pick up the speed again. You want to make sure that when you're floating before, that you're not at your top speed. Don't get there. You want to float from 110 up to 110, and then from there, you want to slowly but surely get to your top speed. Once you've gone to your top speed, you want to hold it for as long as possible. Well, now that you're holding your top speed, it doesn't really matter where everyone else is. You're holding your top speed. Now you want to make sure that you just focus on your form, making sure it's as efficient as possible. You're just cycling your legs, because where you are right now, there isn't much else you can really do. Reason being is, like I said before, it's impossible to sprint all out past 80 meters, even less over 200, because you've used up all your energy. So now your focus should be on just getting to that line as efficiently as possible. Like I said for the 100-meter video, you want to make sure that when you do get to that line, you don't dip. Dipping will disperse your energy, throw your body off, and you'll change your center of mass. It will really destroy your triple extension, if you had any, because of the changed angle you're in. So you want to, and dipping doesn't really make you any faster or get to the line any faster, unless you're doing it like Fred Curly, because the way he does it like this is much more efficient than just leaning forwards, because you're just moving your head over the line most of the time. If you actually want to get there faster, the goal would be to get your chest past the line fast, not your head. Your head doesn't count for anything when you get to line as your chest. They time your speed off of your chest, not your head. If it was your head, Usain Bolt wouldn't have 958 or 1919 for the world records. They'd be slightly lower, because anyone can move their head, but it doesn't really dictate where your entire body position is, because you're supposed to be landing under your center of mass. So that's why they use your chest and not your head. So don't just, if you are going to dip, don't just dip with your head, because you're not going to get to the line any faster. In fact, you're going to be slightly slower. Make sure if you do dip, though wouldn't recommend it, you dip with your body. Now, for 200, even more so than 100 meters, it's important that your drive phase is as efficient as possible, because you have a limited amount of energy to get you from 0 meters to 200 meters, not 100. And it's quite easy to use a lot of energy in your drive phase. Some people are able to, well, not some people, most people are able to use about 50 to 60% of their entire energy reserves, which, by the way, you cannot change. Your energy reserves are basically set for life. There's no training you can do to improve that. You just try and get more efficient with it. Use about 50 to 60% of their entire energy reserves, just trying to get out of the blocks and a couple of steps forwards. So making sure that you have an efficient drive phase so that this doesn't happen, so you're actually able to last later on in the race, is really important. Reason being is how much energy you have once you've gone out of your drive phase is really important. For 100, obviously it's important because you will decelerate slower, but for longer races it's even more important, because it doesn't matter whether you're running 100 or 200 or a 400, you're only gonna be at your top speed for probably at most 10-15 meters. And this can vary depending on how much energy you've used already in the race. If you've used most of your energy, you might not even get to 10 meters, but if you've barely used any, it's really going to be much easier for you to potentially get to hold your top speed for 15 meters. And even holding your top speed for 1 extra meter will put you ahead of everyone else. Reason being is, if everyone else is decelerating at the same rate, which the chances of that happening will just, they're basically zero, because essentially everyone will just get to the finish line at the same time as long as everyone has the same top speed. You holding yours for an extra meter would mean that there's literally like a couple of milliseconds of you being ahead. As long as you don't panic, you're going to win the race. So making sure your drive phase is efficient, so that if such a scenario did end up happening, you would win, you win. Though most likely it is worth noting that some people have low top speeds, some people have high top speeds, and depending on which you have or which your opponents have, you're going to be seeing some crazy things. Like, you might see someone who's gone to 60 meters and he's leading way ahead of everyone else, and then he fades quite quickly at like 130 meters. Or maybe you see someone who's behind you that you passed, like from the gun, pass you. Maybe you didn't go out as hard as the other guy who was like way gone, but this guy, he went nice and slow control and he just passed you. It was kind of just made it seem like he wasn't even moving. If you ever want to try that, it's quite a fun feeling to have, where you just feel everyone essentially stand still. The reason that happens is because the person next to you has either one of two things, or maybe both. A, they had a better drive phase than you, they use less energy, and they have a top speed similar to yours. And because they use less energy and they're reaching their top speed later, whilst you're decelerating, they're still accelerating to try and get to their top speed, or they're already there. So they're gonna do much better than you will, and then since they use less energy, they're gonna be able to get there and hold it for slightly longer than you will. So essentially, it's gonna look like you're standing still. Or 2B, the most likely option is they have a higher top speed than you. So whilst you're going at full speed or however fast you're going, they're still trying to get to theirs, and they're just gonna pass you essentially whilst trying to get there, because obviously they're faster than you. Like I said in the 100-meter video, if you run into someone, well, don't run into them, but if you go against someone who has a higher top speed than you, make sure you don't panic. The reason being, like I said before in that video, if they have a higher top speed than you, you probably wasn't going to win anyway. There's a small chance that they might make a couple mistakes in the race that lets you win. But I've had races where I've made 3 mistakes and I ended up even just slowing down after that. I essentially just gave up and I still won the race. That should just go to show, if you're going against someone who has a higher top speed than you, probably don't really stand much of a chance. So make sure you don't forget about them. If you see that there's someone like that or a couple people like that, just forget about them, because this isn't about them right now, it's about you. Because if such a scenario is going on, then most likely you're not extremely fast, you're trying to get fast. So your goal should be making sure that you have a really efficient race, a really good race, and you just try and get your personal bests down, and work in your own time on your top speed and everything else, so you can become like the people who would beat you in a scenario. Because there's no point in really tensing and rushing and trying to catch someone who's 10 meters ahead of you. What would be good in this scenario to try and improve, for whether this is 100, 200, or 400, would be making sure that you're recording yourself so you can actually see not just what you was doing, but what they were doing. Like, because if they had better form than you, then it's obviously going to be worthwhile looking to see what they did that you didn't do. That will obviously help you. Most likely, if someone's recording you, that person, good chance they are going to end up leaving the frame. But before they do leave the frame, they probably were getting ready to pass you anyway. And when they do pass you, it's the most important part would be from when they pass you to before they can pass you. So seeing what they did up until that point is much more important than what they did afterwards. because most likely after that point there isn't really that much difference between you and them, unless it was literally like they passed you at like with 100 meters left to go. In that case, I mean, to be honest, you got a lot of work to do, or somehow you end up against a field of elites, in which case you were just very unlucky. But just making sure that you see what they do and you try and replicate some of that. Don't try and replicate their form, but replicate their technique within their form. So if you see them land more under their center of mass, have better arm swings than you, more efficiently, so they're not going like this, they're going like this, and some other things that are more important, then look at that. And also, whilst you're there, once they do beat you, saying they did beat you, if it was by, they do have a much higher top speed, though they probably would, try and ask them some questions, you know, like, because most people don't start off fast. There are a couple of different reasons why someone is faster than someone else. So just try and see if they can, if they know why, if they're even willing to tell you why. Because they're like, sometimes it's not even so much about what happens on the track. A lot of times it's what's not on the track. And when I say that, isn't just like, okay, like how they were training, like were they doing a lot of block starts, were they working on their drive phase a lot, did they do a lot of top speed training? No, I mean like simple stuff, like did they stretch, for example, or did they do a specific drill that you didn't even know existed? It's like small things like this that could be the difference between someone having a top speed of like 20 miles per hour and then someone having a top speed of 30. If you like my video, like the video, let me know in the comment section below. Check the description, because anything I forget to say in the video, I always put in the description. And if you like my content, subscribe. Helps the channel out a lot. I post every 2 days at 1 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time. If you don't know when that is, just hit the bell and then you'll be notified instantly.